This lesson will be about exception handling in Java and closing resources when exceptions happen. Let's create a new project and a Java project. Give me a main. We'll call it exceptions. Alrighty, what we're going to do here is going to start by using the file writer to write to a file. Here we go. As always, I like to do a little sys out hello, just to make sure everything's hunky-dory. And hello is working. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a string to a file. String pros equals, whoa. And the reason I use that is in typing class, that's the string we had to type to practice our speed. So I have that memorized, muscle memory. All right, so we're going to create a file writer. Okay. And I'm going to expand the project over here so you can see there's no file there yet. And we're going to write it to pros.txt. Okay? That'll be the name of the file. But saying, hey, you have to handle this checked exception, this IO exception. We're not going to handle it right now. We're going to handle it later. I just want to write to the file, so I'm going to say add exception to method signature. And look up here. See how the public static void main args? There's no throw exception here, but there will be in a moment. Click on this. I'm going to say add to signature. Now this throws the exception. So there's the file writer. I'm going to say for character cha in pros.toCharacter array. All right. So no, this is not the best way to write to a file, but I don't want to go into that kind of rabbit hole. So I'm just going to write it one character at a time. Now, what we will see here is, if we look at the Java doc for file writer, it has, for methods, it has what's true for most output streams. It has a flush and a close. Flush and a close. So we're going to want to flush the output stream and then close it. So after we write all the characters, we're going to do file writer.flush, file writer.close. Let's run this. And now we have this file pros.txt, and if I open it, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the country. Let's see what happens if we run it twice, if it overwrites it or if it appends to it. Overwrites it, because we're going to say, we're going to put now is the time. Let's just see, let's run it again. And we open it. Yeah, it's overwriting the file. Okay, that's fine. So this is bad because if we get an exception while we're writing to the file, or any time before we close it, then we'll have the JVM will have opened a file handle to that file and it won't be closed. And the operating system has a finite number of file handles. So at some point, we're going to just keep leaking file handles, and then at some point in the future, our server will crash, or at least the Java JVM will crash on the server. So what we want to do here is we want to flush and close it. So let's remove this throws IO's exception, and let's handle the exception now. So let's surround this with a try catch. All right, let's just pay attention to this right here. File writer equals null. New up the file writer. If we catch an exception, we're going to print the stack trace. Let's not do that. Let's do a system out. Problem writing file. And we'll just e.getMessage will tell us what the message is of the exception. Okay, so that's cool. But we still have down here, we still have every time we write we might get an exception. So let's move it up into the try. Makes sense. And then when we flush, we might get an exception. Let's move that up into the try catch. And the close, again, bad. Okay? Because if we get an exception on line 15 while we're writing, then it's going to go into the catch and it's never going to close. So what you do here is you do a finally. Because finallys are guaranteed to run. And we say if FW does not equal null, and by setting checking if FW does not equal null means that line 13, we were able to new it up. So we were able to open that file handle on the operating system. Okay? If it's null, if we got an exception here, then there's no reason to close it. If we never created the file writer, we never allocated a file handle on the operating system. So if FW is null, we don't need to close it. But if it is null, then we need to close it. All right? And look at that. It's saying, hey, I can throw another exception when you close it. So the way we did all this before Java, what was it, 7 or 8, or whatever, we would surround it with another try catch. And in this one, all we would do is log it to the logger because there's absolutely nothing we can do. I'm going to put a little comment out here. Log to logger. And then what we do is we would log it as a warning to the logger. And that would be inspected by someone, or it would end up sending an email to someone saying, hey, we got this warning. Because the server would keep running, it's just going to crash sometime in the future. So we would log it to the logger. That is the pattern that I wrote for years. So we're going to go ahead and run this. Let's delete pros.txt. You know what we're going to do? We're going to create the file with pros. All right, we're going to create the file with the current time of the in milliseconds as part of the name, so I get a new one every time, just so we can see it. Okay, so I'm going to delete pros.txt. I'm going to run it. And we got this pros blah, 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 blah text. Okay, so that all worked fine. And that is the way we wrote code before, I think it was Java 7. Now what we do is we use a try with resource, so we don't have to write so much darn code. And back to the Java doc, we'll see that the file writer implements the interface auto-closable. And if you implement this interface auto-closable, then you use this new try with resource syntax, and the JVM will close it for you behind the scenes. It'll do the finally and all that stuff behind the scene. So let's do this. Let's change our try and put parentheses around it. And what we're going to do is say file writer we're going to create the file writer inside the parentheses in the try. And we can get rid of our finally now. Ooh, isn't that much nicer? Try with resource. So what we're going to do is by newing up the file writer in the parentheses of the try, and because the file writer implements auto-closable, it'll be closed for us under the covers. And we'll just run this again. And it worked. Maybe I could throw an exception, but it's not really necessary to show you this syntax. Okay, so that is try catch finally and try with resource.